I've been testing the Whoop Strap 4.0 every day for the last 7 months now, and I've collected one of the largest sets of data I've used for any single video so far. In this video, we're gonna scientifically analyze that data and find out if the Whoop Strap 4.0 is worth the money. Specifically, I'll focus on 3 of the most important aspects of the Whoop Strap I can objectively test. First, we'll evaluate the accuracy of the heart rate tracking, which I tested during a total of 367 different workouts. Second, we'll take a look at the sleep stage tracking, for which I will use data from 18 nights, distributed roughly equally over the last 7 months. And finally, we'll look at the skin temperature tracking of the Whoop Strap 4.0 during the night, which will compare to an electronic pill I use to track my body core temperature. So let's see how the Whoop Strap 4.0 performs from a health tracking perspective, and also how it compares to all of the other wearables I've tested over the last years. Now, as always, I do not want to waste your time, so there are timestamps in the description below and also on the timeline. Hello everyone. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist specializing in biological data analysis. Now, in my videos, I try to avoid lengthy discussions of the specs, so let's very briefly take a look at what the Whoop Strap 4.0 is and what it can do, and then quickly move on to the results. Also, I should mention that I will include an affiliate link in the description below, which means you get a discount if you do decide to buy a Whoop Strap, and Whoop also gives me a percentage of that to support the channel. However, my opinions are completely my own, and Whoop did not have any input or any knowledge of this video. Okay, so the Whoop Strap as a device is mostly focused on health tracking and not so much on smartwatch features. This also means it has no screen or any interface at all on the device itself, and it's mostly designed as a health monitoring device. The Whoop Strap 4.0 keeps track of your health in several ways. It can measure your heart rate, skin temperature, breathing rate, oxygen saturation, and heart rate variability. Your heart rate will be measured throughout the day and night, and if you start a sports activity, the frequency of the measurements will go up and the app will show a graph of your heart rate after the workout. What I believe is potentially even more important is that throughout the night it will measure your resting heart rate, respiratory rate, heart rate variability, skin temperature, and blood oxygen levels. Measuring this during the night is one of the optimal times to measure these metrics, and the app will show you in the morning if there were any deviations from your normal range, which could indicate there are some health issues. An increased skin temperature could, for instance, indicate that you're suffering from an infection such as COVID-19 or the flu, and a high resting heart rate could be an indicator of poor recovery. Now, one of the benefits of the Whoop Strap is that you can wear it in many different locations on the body, and I personally prefer to wear it on my biceps, which is also what most of the test results in this video will be based on. However, Whoop offers many more options of where to wear the device itself, and the device should be able to work out where it is located automatically. You can, for instance, wear the Whoop Strap 4.0 in your boxers, thong, or in a compression top. The major downside of the Whoop Strap, for me at least, is the cost. Whoop has completely embraced the subscription model, charging you a certain amount of money each month to use their device and the app, but charging no money upfront for the device itself. I personally prefer just to pay for the device up front instead of having a subscription, but the upside of this system is that Whoop is more incentivized to keep updating the app and the firmware on the device, and you also get a new version of the hardware for free if they release a new one. Still, the Whoop Strap is not cheap. Say you take the 2-year subscription at $20 per month, that means you will pay $480 over that time frame. You will need to decide if this is worth it for you, and I hope that this video will help you with that. The main question I will try to answer in this video is, can we trust the metrics and the measurements that the Whoop Strap 4.0 provides? So let's get to the test results. If I had to summarize the results, I'd have to say that the Whoop Strap 4.0 is a very well-rounded device, and it's especially good when it comes to sleep tracking. However, I want to start off by looking at another feature, namely heart rate tracking. To test that, I'll compare the heart rate measurements of the Whoop Strap 4.0 against the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, which can generally record my heart rate very accurately. We'll start by looking at the easiest type of exercise for a watch to track, cycling indoors. Now, this involves very little movement or tension on my arms and will therefore produce less noise. I tested this during a total of 108 spinning workouts, and here we can see an overview of that accuracy. Along the horizontal axis is the heart rate value according to the polar H10 ECG chest strap, and on the vertical axis the value according to the Whoop strap 4.0. Now each individual heart rate measurement is represented by a transparent dot. However, there are so many that you can only really see them if there are many dots in a single location. Now the closer the points are to this blue line right here, the better the agreement with the ECG chest strap. And the darker black the color, the more dots there are. And as you can see, there's a pretty good agreement between the Whoop strap 4.0 and the ECG chest strap, as almost all points are along the blue line. However, we can also see that in the higher heart rate range, the points tend to be slightly below the blue line, indicating it detected a slightly too low heart rate, though it's just a bit off, not much. The correlation, this R value right here, is also pretty good at 0.94. The correlation cannot be higher than 1, so 0.94 is not bad at all. However, as I mentioned before, we do still see some values away from the blue line, so let's take a look why that is. And we can see why that is if we actually look at the individual training sessions. Here you can see one example interval spinning session, for instance, with the clock time along the horizontal axis and my heart rate on the vertical axis. In blue, I plotted my heart rate according to the polar H10 ECG chest strap, and in red is my heart rate according to the Whoop strap. As you can see, the Whoop strap 4.0 agrees very well with the ECG chest strap, though the red line is always slightly below the blue line, indicating that the Whoop strap detected a heart rate that was a tiny bit lower than the ECG chest strap. However, this is not too bad at all. On the other hand, for some workouts this was a bit worse, like this one right here for instance, where the heart rate detected by the Whoop strap was quite a bit lower at the peaks of my intervals, as you can see right here, but also right here and right here. And there are some training sessions where this was even a bit worse, like in this one right here. Especially in the beginning, we see that the Whoop strap detected a much too low heart rate. However, there were also plenty of workouts where it performed almost perfectly, like this one right here for instance. Overall, I would say that the Whoop strap 4.0 seems to do quite okay. However, let's put this into perspective by comparing it to many of the other watches I've tested over the last 2 years. That overview is displayed right here. The correlation value I was talking about before is the metric I will use for this, and that is displayed along the horizontal axis right here. We want that value to be as close to 1 as possible. On the vertical axis, I ordered the watches from worst to best. So the further to the right and the higher a device is, the better is its correlation with the reference device. Now here I marked the Whoop strap 4.0 in red, and as you can see, the Whoop strap is doing quite well. Now, if we then zoom in and get rid of the worst performing watches, we can see that even more clearly. So again here in red is the Whoop strap, and it's performing about the same as the Polar Verity Sense, which is Polar's optical heart rate tracker that you can also wear on your biceps. However, it's not doing quite as good as the best heart rate trackers, which are in this case Apple watches and some of the newer Huawei watches. Also, it's performing about the same, at least for me, as the previous generation, the Whoop strap 3.0, so it doesn't appear to have improved that much for this exercise. Overall, for me, this indicates that for cycling indoors, the Whoop strap 4.0 does quite well, and it's amongst the better watches out there, though there are other watches and fitness trackers that are outperforming it, like the Apple Watch and the Watch Fit 2 and GT3 series from Huawei. However, cycling indoors is one of the easiest exercises for most watches and wearables to track. While cycling outdoors, on the other hand, watches tend to shift a lot more on the wrist, making accurate heart rate readings more difficult. Let's see if this influenced the heart rate accuracy of the Whoop strap 4.0. In total, I tested this during 189 bike rides. Here we see a similar overview plot to before, but now for biking outside. As you can see, there's still a pretty good agreement between the Whoop strap 4.0 and the ECG chest strap. Though again, there's a slight tendency for the points to be a bit below the blue line, especially in the higher heart rate ranges. The correlation is also lower compared to what we saw for cycling indoors, with the correlation now being 0.75. And we can see why that is based on the individual training sessions. And here you can see one such example training session. Again, in blue-green, I plot the data from the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, and in red is my heart rate as it was recorded by the Whoop strap. You can see that the Whoop strap generally follows along with the ECG chest strap, but it sort of shows a smoothed out version of the actual heart rate. It can't quite track the full peaks and the valleys in my heart rate, but it's really sort of an average version of what my actual heart rate was. And this is what we see to varying degrees for basically all bike rides. The general patterns in my heart rate are tracked, but the details are missed, meaning some of the peaks and dips are just not recorded. Now, in some cases, these effects are relatively small, as you can see for this bike ride, for instance. Or as another example for this bike ride right here, which is not too bad, but also not super good. However, sometimes the effects are a bit bigger, and you can see that especially in the beginning of this example session right here. We can again put this into perspective by looking at many of the other watches I've tested over the last years. Similar to before, we will use the correlation with the ECG chest strap as the value on the horizontal axis, and the better the agreement, the more to the top right a device is. As you can see, the Whoop Strap 4.0, which I again marked in red right here, does not perform that bad. It's still in the upper middle class of heart rate trackers. Again though, Apple watches and some Huawei watches are definitely outperforming it. So for tracking your heart rate while cycling outside, the Whoop Strap is not doing quite as well as what it was doing for cycling indoors. However, it's still somewhere in the upper middle class of heart rate trackers. However, so far, these exercises represent easy and medium hard exercises for a fitness tracker to track your heart rate. So let's now move on to one of the more difficult exercises for a watch to track, weightlifting. This is much more difficult because of the increased tension on my wrist and arm, making it much harder for the watch or fitness tracker to get a clean heart rate signal. However, first a quick side note. If you're interested in the latest updates on the wearables I'm testing, I'm planning to start back up with my newsletter and posting more off-the-cuff things on my Instagram and my YouTube Shorts channel. So if you're interested in any of those are linked below. Of course, you would also make me really happy and it would really help my efforts if you subscribe to this YouTube channel. But of course, that's totally up to you. Now, enough self-promotion. Let's take a look at the performance during weightlifting, which I tested during a total of 67 workouts. Here we can see an overview of that accuracy, similar to before. Though we can see many points along the blue line, we also see that there are plenty of points below it, especially in the somewhat higher heart rate range. The correlation is also not super high now at 0.77. And we can see why that is based on the individual training sessions. Again, in blue-green we have the results for the ECG chest strap, and in red the results of the Whoop Strap 4.0. Each time I do a set of exercises, my heart rate increases, as you can see in the peaks in blue. Now, it's a bit of a mixed bag. The Whoop Strap is sometimes able to keep up with this increase in heart rate, but sometimes it's also not able to. For the first half of this training, it was sort of able to keep track, though still not the full peak. However, the second half was just bad, and it wasn't able to keep track of my peaks at all. And it was really different depending on the training session. This session right here, for instance, was really bad and the Whoop Strap detected none of the peaks. On the other hand, this session was a bit better in the beginning, though also not perfect. And this final session I want to show you was quite bad again. It was not at all able to track the peaks in my heart rate. And similar to before, we can put this into perspective by comparing it to many of the other watches I've tested in the past. And those results are displayed here. Again, similar to before, the more to the top right the device is, the better is its consistency with the ECG chest strap. And as you can see, relative to other watches, the Whoop Strap 4.0, which I marked here in red, is really somewhere near the middle. And we can see that even better as we zoom in. As you can see, the performance of the Whoop Strap is close to that of some Fitbit devices and also some older generation Huawei watches. However, I personally would only really use some of the newer Huawei watches and Apple watches for heart rate tracking during weightlifting. Otherwise, I would just advise you to use an ECG chest strap, since this is generally the most reliable way of getting good heart rate measurements, as I showed you in a recent video. Now, I also tested the Whoop Strap during a single run and also during one hike, and during these tests it actually performed quite well. Here you can see the results of an interval run I did, and the Whoop Strap in red was mostly able to track my heart rate, though it was a few BPM too low. Overall though, this is not bad. Now, during a short hike I did, it actually performed quite well, as you can see right here. It managed to keep track of my heart rate quite accurately during most of the hike. So overall, I would conclude that the Whoop Strap 4.0 is a decent heart rate tracker. It is generally above average for sure compared to other watches when it comes to heart rate tracking, though not quite at the top. Overall, I would therefore give the heart rate tracking 4 out of 5 stars, since it is quite good, but it still has significant room left to grow. Next, let's move on to the thing that most smartwatches and health trackers struggle with: sleep stage tracking. I've used the Whoop Strap 4.0 basically every night over the last 7 months. However, I've been fighting with Whoop to get a good data export to do the data analysis for this video. In the end, I managed to get the raw data from 18 nights about evenly spread over the last 7 months. So let's see how the sleep stage tracking of the Whoop Strap 4.0 performed. To check if the Whoop Strap 4.0 can detect my sleep stages, I'll compare it to an EEG device called the Dream 2 that can actually measure my brain waves and has been shown to be relatively reliable at sleep stage tracking. And here I show an overview of the sleep test results. Now, for getting an overall impression of how well the Whoop Strap performs, the Dream 2 should likely be good enough. However, the gold standard for this kind of test would be polysomnography, which I would also like to try on the Whoop Strap in the future. Now, on top are the sleep stages as recorded by the EEG device, and on the left are the sleep stages as recorded by the Whoop Strap. I wore both the EEG device and the Whoop Strap to bed for 18 nights, and we will see how close the predictions of the Whoop Strap are to those of the EEG device. Now, each column here sums to 100%, meaning that we can see what percentage of each of the sleep stages according to the Dream 2 was predicted as each sleep stage by the Whoop Strap. If they perfectly agree, all values on the diagonal should be 100%. First of all, we see that almost 98% of what was deep sleep according to the EEG device was also detected as being deep sleep by the Whoop Strap, which is really good. And we can see that even better based on the individual nights. And here we see one such example night. On top are the sleep stages as recorded by the Dream 2 EEG headband, with the clock time along the horizontal axis and the sleep stages on the vertical axis. On the bottom we have a similar plot, but now for the Whoop Strap, and I've highlighted all the EEG recorded deep sleep in purple right here. So for this first night we can indeed see that basically all of the EEG detected deep sleep was also detected as deep sleep by the Whoop Strap. The Whoop Strap just detected a bit of extra deep sleep later in the night as well, right here and right here. And that is basically what we see for all nights. All of the deep sleep detected by the EEG device was also detected by the Whoop Strap. However, the Whoop Strap also detects a bunch of extra deep sleep, mostly later in the night. And again, you can see something similar in this example night right here, where again later in the night it detected some extra deep sleep. So deep sleep detection is looking quite good. What about light sleep detection? Well, this is quite okay as well. Almost 60% of what the EEG device detected as light sleep was also detected as light sleep by the Whoop Strap. If they did disagree, this was mostly with deep sleep at about 28% confusion. Now, REM sleep also showed a similar agreement at about 60%. This is actually quite good since most devices tend to struggle to detect REM sleep accurately. If REM sleep was predicted differently than the EEG device, it was mostly predicted as light sleep by the Whoop Strap. And we can see that even better based on the individual nights. So this is a similar plot to before, but now I've highlighted all the EEG detected REM sleep in red. And we can see a really good match between the REM sleep detection of the EEG headband and that of the Whoop Strap 4.0. This also means that we would be able to see the sleep cycles based on just the data from the Whoop Strap, which not many devices can do. Now, you go through roughly 4 to 6 sleep cycles each night, each one starting with light sleep and deep sleep marked here in blue, and each one ending in REM sleep marked here in red. As you can see, I likely had 1, 2, 3, 4 complete sleep cycles this night. And what you can also see is we can detect these sleep cycles based on both the data from the EEG device, but also the data from the Whoop Strap, which not many devices can do. However, I should mention that not all nights are quite as good. Take this night here, for example. Here I likely had 4 sleep cycles as well, but the Whoop Strap missed one of the REM sleep segments. However, for the most part, the Whoop Strap agrees quite well. Now, awake detection was also quite okay, with an agreement of about 64%. If there was confusion, this was mostly with light sleep, which makes sense as light sleep is the closest sleep stage to being awake. And we can see why that is based on the individual nights, with my awake moments according to the EEG device marked in green right here. You can see there's some agreement, though it's far from perfect, with the Whoop strap detecting a few less awake moments in this night, as you can see right here and right here. Interestingly, for this example night, it's actually the reverse, with the Whoop strap actually detecting a couple of more awakenings, as you can see right here, here, and here. To put these results into context, we can compare the performance of the Whoop Strap 4.0 to that of many of the other devices I've tested over the last years. This graph right here shows an overview of the agreement of different watches with the EEG device. Along the horizontal axis, we have the average agreement over the 4 individual sleep stages, and on the vertical axis, we have the agreement of the worst sleep stage. Now, the better the agreement, the more to the top right the device is. And as you can see, the best agreeing devices include different Fitbits, the Whoop Strap 3.0 and the Withings Sleep Analyzer. If we now display the Whoop Strap 4.0 in the same plot, which is marked here in red, we see that it's still in the same top right corner with the best performing watches. So it still performs about the same as the Whoop Strap 3.0, but it's also similar to these Fitbit devices and the Withings Sleep Analyzer. All in all, I'm quite happy with how the Whoop Strap 4.0 performs when it comes to sleep stage tracking. Now, it definitely isn't perfect, but it is amongst the best current consumer-based sleep tracking devices I've tested, and it's one of the few that can actually detect my sleep cycles. Keeping all of that in mind, I'd give the sleep stage tracking of the Whoop Strap 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, we need polysomnography for the most accurate sleep stage tracking measurements, but I think that without taking EEG measurements, the Whoop Strap 4.0 is one of the best devices currently out there. However, I do believe that better algorithms could still improve the sleep stage tracking of the Whoop Strap, which is why it doesn't get 5 stars. Now, another interesting feature of the Whoop Strap is that it will continuously measure your skin temperature. This is an additional interesting feature to measure throughout the night. Now, to test this feature, I'll compare it to measurements I took of my core body temperature during sleep, and I used the MyTemp sensor from Purple Axis for this, which takes the form of a small, easy-to-swallow capsule that measures core body temperature. The sensor is normally used by athletes to continuously measure their temperature. That data could, for instance, be used to monitor the safety and performance of an athlete. However, I used it to track my core body temperature during sleep. Here you can see a graph of my core body temperature throughout the night plotted in blue and my skin temperature according to the Whoop Strap plotted in black. The time is on the horizontal axis and the temperature is on the vertical axis, with degrees Fahrenheit on the right for my American friends and degrees Celsius on the left for most of the rest of the world. For Americans who are wondering what the C stands for, it's the first letter of the word correct, and it also happens to be the first letter of the word Celsius. As you can see, during this night, my core body temperature dropped during the first part of the night, and after that it slowly rose again as it got close to the point of awakening. Interestingly, my skin temperature does not follow the same pattern. It actually rose as I got under the covers and kept slowly rising throughout the night with some peaks and some dips. And we can see something similar for this second night, where my core body temperature goes down during the first part of the night and then slowly rises again, whereas my skin temperature, according to the Whoop Strap, shows more of a continuous increase. And this is more or less the general pattern I observed for all of the nights I tested it, where the graph of my core body temperature shows a dip and then a slow rise, whereas my skin temperature more or less shows a continuous increase. Now, this doesn't mean that the Whoop Strap does not measure the correct temperature. It just shows you that core body temperature and skin temperature are very different things. Skin temperature is influenced much more by the environment, and for instance, whether or not a blanket is covering me. Therefore, the main purpose of the temperature sensor in the Whoop Strap 4.0 is probably to detect significant deviations of your average skin temperature from normal, for instance, when you have an increase in temperature due to a viral infection. However, I'm still researching potential use cases of skin temperature measurements and how the body regulates core versus skin temperature. If you have any more thoughts or any knowledge, leave it in the comments below. Now, there are a few things I did not address so far in this review because they're a bit more subjective. First of all, like I mentioned before, I really like that you don't necessarily have to wear the Whoop strap on your wrist, which means that you can wear it even during more formal occasions, for instance. However, I don't know for sure if it performs equally well no matter where you wear it, and this is something I still have to test. Second, the material of the Whoop strap band is quite nice. However, the downside is that if it gets wet, it takes quite a while for it to dry, and I haven't really seen any alternatives. Finally, getting a data export with my own data from Whoop has been a nightmare. It literally took me 4 months of emailing back and forth, and I still don't have all my data. Almost all companies have solved this, and Whoop is really behind on this. Luckily, I had my heart rate data automatically uploaded to Strava, and with some custom Python coding, I was able to load all of it and process it for the testing. Now, getting back to the test that I did, overall, I'm happy with the performance of the Whoop Strap 4.0. It is quite good at heart rate tracking, and it's one of the best current devices for sleep tracking. Now, it does lack GPS tracking, so you will need to take your phone with you if you go running or cycling. Now, based on the heart rate and sleep tracking, overall, I'd give the Whoop strap between 4 and 4.5 out of 5 stars. However, given the relatively high price, I might rate it at 4 stars instead of 4.5. Now, if you want to try the Whoop strap, there's an affiliate link in the description below that provides you with a $30 or €30 discount and also helps support the channel. Now, if you want to buy another device or anything at all on Amazon for that matter, even something as small as toilet paper, and at the same time support the channel, there are affiliate links in the description below that do not cost you any extra. Now, if your focus is purely on heart rate tracking, I'd recommend the Apple Watch for iOS and the Huawei Watch GT 3 series or Huawei Watch Fit 2 on Android. Now, of course, the best heart rate tracker under most circumstances is still an ECG chest strap. Now, I'll also link the recent reviews I did on Garmin watches right here. Now, I hope this video provided you with some value. Thank you so much for watching and catch you in the next video.